Hey, my darkly dreaming, dearly devoted, doubly deliciously designed, dead, dreary, disco stew, Dexter didgeridoo doofuses! Dexter's back and so am I, this time for the last Original Sin episode, at least for this season anyway. This time it's apparently titled Code Blues and not the original title anymore, which was Born This Way. Possibly a Lady Gaga reference? I don't know, I don't listen to Lady Gaga. But anyway, point is, you know the drill. But just in case you actually don't, I will say I'm here to do a full spoiler recap and review of everything that takes place in this 10th and final episode of this season, so just be aware of that, and it's about as simple as that. Let's get to it. Dexter Original Sin episode 10 opens with an instant flashback! It's flashback time right away, instant flashback right from the get-go. As we see a resilient Brian trying to comfort baby brother Dexter while they were still in that shipping container as children in front of their dead flashback mother Laura. That sounds disrespectful to call her a dead flashback mother, but that's okay, that's what I wrote down. Brian then says Mum's busy right now as he kind of like sings some nursery rhymes and whatever as Brian desperately tries to comfort Dexter. It's a little bit awkward and a little bit sad. Right before Harry then rushes in as he did, as we all know once again, and we get that shot of Harry breaking the brothers apart. We see a dramatic zoom out shot of an alone Brian in a cold and dark bloodied room. And it really just emphasizes the tragedy of Brian all along as we then get this sort of montage of just how horrible his life is following this. We get a little voiceover of him saying that was the first time my brother was taken away from me. And he finishes that off by saying, but it wouldn't be the last. And from here, yeah, we get that fun little montage of Brian's horrible life, you know, for funsies. We see family members being dramatically torn apart from each other in Dexter and Brian, with Barb driving Brian away from his initial second family, explaining that they're looking for a better fit. So we see as they seek for that better fit, and we get all the context of Brian's childhood experiences that we've never really known a whole lot about, interspliced with the context that he's discussing this history with his flashback therapist, who happens to be Paul Petrie, one of his, at the time, future victims. So we then see that as a child, Brian was taken to a family named the Kirstens, and there he was bullied by an older kid being locked in a closet all night long, forgotten and alone once again, which brings back the terrible memories of his mother and that whole experience that went down once again in that shipping container. Everything comes back to that dreadful day for both Brian and Dexter. It's such an impactful moment, and there's constant reminders all the time in Brian's life. Upon being discovered in the morning though, Brian then attacks the Kirsten mother, which prompted him to be sent to a third home now, this time a foster home with various boys, one of whom who would steal his food, prompting him to make another vengeful attack with a fork to the hand. We cut to a fourth home now, and what a time to be alive, because Brian is finally sent off to the place which will be his home at least for a while, a place called the Harbour Light Mental Hospital. Barb once again leaves him astray here, though at least with some semblance of guilt this time as she watches him sadly walk away. She knows this isn't like the best place for a kid to be, but she's kind of out of options as he keeps acting out. As he grows up though, we see that he is dealing with many social issues and is told that he's shown signs of being a psychopath. And as the years go, sans freedom, things just keep bubbling up to the surface in bad ways. And by this point, a presumably teenage impatient Brian is dealing with an abusive caretaker, Raul Martinez, who sells his patients' medications off the books to other people without anybody's permission, obviously. With this action ultimately depriving Brian of the chance to heal, Brian viciously attacks yet another problematic individual in his life and is carried off to what I assume to be this place's version of solitary confinement. But the interesting thing is that this guy who was stealing his medication is another future victim, so we're seeing everything kind of fall into place here, you know? Basically the point is, Brian has had a shitty time dealing with shitty people and continuously attacking them only to make his situation in life even shittier. There's really no way out and no way to make it any better, it seems. It's just a whole bunch of shit for him, basically, and no matter what he tries to do, it always ends up the same way. So we now cut back to the conversation with Paul Petrie, which is a little bit further into the future, as Petrie expresses that Brian has shown signs of improvement lately though in his behavior and seems to be in a bit of a better place, which was not what I was expecting to hear. To which Brian then asks if that means he's now good enough now to finally be reunited with his brother Dexter, which is obviously his primary goal here. And once again, he is denied, with the theory that Dexter is an emotional trigger to him, and going back to him will likely only send Brian to once again spiral in some sort of violent way. With this news, Brian concludes that it's a hopeless endeavor then. If he attacks others, he gets shit. If he does what he's meant to do and heals and does all the good stuff, he still gets shit. There's no good part to this. There's no good option. It doesn't matter what he does. So basically, he gives up in the traditional sense, that is, and doesn't really want to go down the path that he's supposed to anymore. Because Dexter, in those around him's eyes, is unattainable, and it's here where he finally decides to attack and kill Paul Petrie. The interesting thing being that when Harry and LaGuerta investigated Paul Petrie's house a couple episodes ago, we were told that he'd only been killed 3 weeks ago. So that really narrows down the timeline here of what we're really witnessing. To me, this confirms that Brian had been a relatively balanced person up until this point too. I mean, I think he was always in danger of going off into the deep end, but it seems like he was staying in character and acting civilized and being a generally good person in the only way that he could be, at least. And this was all in hopes to eventually getting back to his brother. So when those efforts are revealed to be kind of futile, and when Paul Petrie is now revealed to once again play as another obstacle to that goal and not as an assist to it, Petrie becomes Brian's very first kill, that we know of anyway. I think that's what this is suggesting. Paul Petrie is Brian Moses' first kill that he ever takes. I'm pretty sure. And if so, if I'm right, that's very important. That's quite an important piece of the puzzle here. Like, he's not just killing on a whim here, he's killing out of desperation, really. As Brian takes his final blows out on Petrie following a vicious attack, he takes Petrie's car, covered in blood, and drives off into the early evening in search of Dexter, presumably. His entire life has just been about this one primary goal, basically, and all those who kind of just get in his way. It's a frustrating process to witness, even though murder isn't justified. Anyway, cut to present day. We continue where the last episode left us off with a wounded-handed Aaron Spencer on the move and Dexter on his tail, driving through the night, following their little 90s arcade adventure together. Notably, Spencer does not go to Miami Metro and continues through the city to a nearby docked ship, which obviously plays as his little kidnapper persona hideout kind of place, which Dexter comments was only half a mile away from the police station, when ironically they'd been scouring the entire city for Nikki. They then both enter the ship, and it's clear that shit's about to go down, man. This, of course, being the final episode, the two are about to have a final fucking epic confrontation. Shit's exciting, man. I'm pumped up. Just gotta say. But for now, though, we cut back to Miami Metro Hospital, not Miami Metro Hospital. That's not the official title, but that's what I'm calling it, where Bobby Watts is still unconscious and being visited by his wife, Missy, his longtime work partner, Harry, and Deb, who enters the scene. We see a badly photoshopped photo of Bobby and Missy before she takes a hike and leaves the Morgans to the hospital room alone with Bobby. The two, in Harry and Deb, then discuss their familiarity with hospital rooms after Doris's death, as well as Bobby's condition. That's all before Maria LaGuerta interrupts with big news of finding a dead body on a rooftop of a building somewhere in the city. Barb, who is the body, of course, we already know. LaGuerta then comments that it is an especially ugly crime scene where the victim was dismembered with a chainsaw. But the real drama from this news comes from the fact that Harry immediately recognizes the name Barbara Plimpton and knows who that is, but goes on to lie and say he has no idea who that is, because of course that's what he's going to do. He's been lying about the past this entire season and continues to do so. Anyway, the point is everything is coming to a head. Shit's ramping up. We're really getting to the climax here, and yeah, shit's exciting, man. As I just said before. Sorry, I'm excited to even be talking about it. Anyway, while the rest of the police characters go off to investigate Barb's body, and Dexter is closing in on Spencer at the same time. Alone with Bobby, Deb discusses her deep feelings with him despite him being dead cold asleep and not hearing a word. She talks about her scholarship opportunity she's freshly found out about and pours out her pain about everything else that's happened this entire season. I need a new game plan, she expresses. And, we being the clever audience already know what that means. It means she's going to be a cop after everything. Kind of already know that, of course. This is a prequel. We know the job that Deborah goes on to get, but it's been pretty clear this entire time she's been looking for some sort of inspiration and has found it in the police force. It's a good little character arc, if not the most pressing matter when it comes to the rest of this episode, because we now cut back to Aaron Spencer's boat as he walks down some very redly lit stairs and Dexter sneakingly follows like Agent 47 himself.
Step into my office.
Before immediately being not so sneaky, and actually makes himself known by smashing around various pots and pans in the ship's kitchen area in an attempt to delay Spencer's arrival to Nikki, and the fear that, I guess he's scared that he's going to kill him right then and there. I think that's the fear. I've still been a little bit confused about what Aaron Spencer's real end goal and plan is here. It seems so simple and I mean, I'll just say it right now. It is. There's not any more to it, and it kind of sucks, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Anyway, so Dexter now baiting Spencer into letting him know that he has in fact followed him to his now not so secret area. He turns the lights off in the ship in an attempt to get somewhat of an even playing field, and Dexter then begins his search. Spencer corners him though and takes a shot at him with a flare gun and entirely misses from a probably embarrassingly close range. I don't know, not that I've ever tried to, shoot anybody with a flare gun before. Maybe I would do just as bad or even worse. Anyway, the two then get into a short scuffle before Spencer finishes this brief violent interaction with a blow to Dexter's body with a nearby fire extinguisher and quickly heads downstairs, turning the lights back on and obtaining a lead pipe for a weapon. And beneath Dexter now, downstairs, as Dexter kind of looks from above, he then turns on a pump that begins letting water into the room that Nikki is trapped in. And as the water rises, a still shackled to the floor Nikki desperately searches for options, but pretty much awaits what looks like is going to be his inevitable end by drowning. So now Dexter comes downstairs desperately, shit's ramping up, as I said, even still. Like, this episode has such a fast pace, I'll say, by the way. I got through this one real quick, even taking notes and stuff. Like, it was so easy to kind of follow because it was just so exciting. Anyway, Dexter comes downstairs and shouts at Spencer about how could he do this since Nikki is his son, to which Spencer responds, is he? So I guess the fan theories going around were right, and Becca's boyfriend, Guy Nelson, was also the baby daddy or whatever, and this is all for boringly boring revenge, and Spencer really actually doesn't give a shit about Nikki at all. This is just to get back at Becca for cheating on him, basically, which is predictable. We've all kind of known this, at least suspected this for various episodes prior to this, but I don't know, ultimately I find this disappointing. It just feels like the easiest path and story that this could go down for this character, where it's like he wants simple revenge at his ex-wife. Really, that's as deep as his character motivation gets. It's just like, I wanted a little bit more from Aaron Spencer than that, and unfortunately we didn't really get it. Anyway, Dexter then pleads that Nikki's just a kid who doesn't deserve all this, to which Spencer just pretty much doesn't respond to at all. He's like, it's not about what he deserves or whatever. I'm an evil bad guy. Basically, that's what it amounts to anyway. There's a bit more dialogue than that, but basically it's just like, who gives a fuck? That's what Aaron thinks at this point. To which Dexter asks, what kind of a monster are you? Before Aaron prompts him with a decision, where he can either come after him or save Nikki. He can't do both, then asks him what kind of a monster he is. He has to choose salvation for Nikki or death for Spencer. Dexter predictably goes after the more sympathetic and timely issue and dives into the water straight away for Nikki. Interestingly, this is a pretty selfless decision though, given that if Spencer does get away here, Dexter is essentially going to for sure be found out and have his life ruined. So that's a little bit of an interesting nugget there, where he's willing to give up this kill for the greater good. Anyway, grabbing the lead pipe from before, Dexter is able to break the lock off the what can technically now be described as ocean floor, and swims Nikki back up to the surface and gives him a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation just in the Nikki of time. He then shoots off more flares now into the sky and leaves before Nikki even gets a clear visual on him, as he's basically just now gaining consciousness. So it's a little bit too perfect. Nikki didn't see him. He now has time to go back after Aaron Spencer. He gets the best of both worlds. He didn't really have to make a choice at all. I'll take it because it does all fit, but it does feel a little bit convenient, And obviously, yeah, now, as I said, Dexter's going to go on the pursuit of Spencer once again anyway. So the dumb thing about Aaron Spencer's challenge from before is that, even if Dexter did go after Nikki, which he was obviously always going to because, Dexter's the good guy for the most part, that doesn't then make it impossible to get Spencer. It just makes it slightly harder. It just gives him a little bit of a delay. It really wasn't as much of a decision as the show was trying to make it out to be, is my point. But still, it's a little bit of an interesting thought experiment, as it shows Dexter making quick decisions and prioritizing the greater good and going after that innocent person in a very quick matter of a few seconds. So, we can see the goodness in Dexter, I suppose, which we already know is there. Anyway, following the rescue though, we then see elsewhere that Becca is in her home and Nelson is also there, who heads upstairs and is promptly audibly attacked by an enraged Aaron Spencer, who's now at their home. He expresses fury over Becca's lies about Nikki being his son, and then Becca, having escaped from him just in the Nikki of time, resides in temporary safety on the other side of a door, as Aaron Spencer just bashes at it basically, before Dexter, now having already found his way back to Spencer, takes him out with the M99 drug and drags his body out of there. And upon his exit, he sees news of Barb's body being found on the TV, just by the way. Anyway, following this, now Dexter back out on the slice of life pie boat with Spencer tied up under plastic wrap once again. He wakes Spencer up and prompts the question about how it feels to have ruined his life, with his entire legacy and all that he's done this season to have all led to nothing. Basically, Dexter thinks that Spencer's entirely fucked up and everything was futile and none of it mattered, and he's just this bad guy for no real justified reason. He's correct in this thinking, but I'm just explaining his thought process. Anyway, Spencer then says that he's wrong though because he taught Becca a lesson and that his actions were worth it because she will never feel safe again. To which I would argue upon learning of Aaron's disappearance will make her not so concerned in that way because like, sure, she knows that there are killers in this world, but Aaron Spencer's gonna be gone. so I don't think she's gonna be too worried about him showing up again or anything. Anyway, ultimately though, Aaron Spencer has failed as a cop, a father, and a husband, and there is now room for a happy Becca, Nelson, and Nikki to live happily ever after together without him, which is entirely his doing. Basically, sure, he lost Becca and she would have been with Nelson either way, but he still had a chance to have this child, Nikki, in his life. Whether or not he's his biological father or not, he still fucking raised him. I find it kind of ridiculous and psychopathic, I suppose, of Spencer to just off him now. Like, who gives a fuck about this kid that I've been raising for 14 years? Like, I get it. He's enraged and he's gone off the deep end and he's just acting irrationally now. I understand the motivation of the character, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like, I guess in comparison, I'm pretty sane and wouldn't react in the same way, which I guess goes without saying, but it's worth mentioning. We then get a very cool shot as Spencer tells Dexter all this of Dexter's eyes being reflected in the light of the knife he's holding up against his face, as it kind of like symmetrically matches Aaron Spencer's face in place of his eyes. So basically we can see that, you know, the two are alike in some way, as, you know, with the original series, Dexter was always able to speak openly and more truthfully to his victims than anybody in his real life. And this just articulates that idea more, that, you know, they're different sides of the same coin or whatever. They went down a different path even though they're both, you know, pretty fucked up individuals. Anyway, the two then antagonize each other a little more about how the other's a real piece of shit and their own actions are justified and whatever, before Dexter then climactically gets sick of it all, drops the knife into Spencer's neck, violently spurting blood all over the place, which obviously kills him. And all that blood, by the way, is bound to be a bitch to clean up before he returns the boat to Camilla, by the way, but that's not the point. And as I've been predicting for many episodes now though, he then cuts up Aaron Spencer's body, shoves them into plastic bags and lets the pieces off to float beneath the ocean, never to be seen from again. I kind of knew for like what feels like forever that this is exactly where the season was going to end, but it's still pretty satisfying to actually visualize and witness. I don't have an issue with it being predictable in this case because Dexter seasons are always a bit predictable when it comes to the big bad, and it's forgivable here. Anyway, this is all great and all, but it does piss me off a little bit though that they never mention that one of the bodies that they find in season 2 of the Bay Harbor Butcher Hunt is their old police captain. Like what? Nobody mentions this at all? That body doesn't get found conveniently out of all the other bodies they found. I guess he could have decomposed. And then again, I suppose that this was the first time that Dexter disposed of a body this way. So maybe since this instance, he changes locations. I guess to Bay Harbor, wherever that is. Never actually thought about it. Maybe this wasn't Bay Harbor and where he goes on to kill people in the original series is Bay Harbor. I don't know. Anyway, the point is though, with Aaron Spencer finally out of the way and taken care of, bloodied up Dexter drives the slice of pie boat away into the darkness, having reached just that little bit closer to his final form. You know, it's that little bit of satisfying continuation of the character really growing into his own and becoming basically like almost the Michael C. Hall version of the character that we all know and love. It's very well done. I appreciate it. Anyway, meanwhile, cut to Barb's crime scene now. Upon arrival, Harry asks Masuka where Dexter is, to which he says that he hasn't been assigned this shift and, you know, even if he was, he probably shouldn't be here anyway as just an intern. This is way too fucked up of a crime scene to actually witness for just an intern, which is a little bit funny given Dexter's murderous ways, but it's also pretty convenient given that, you know, he just doesn't happen to show up at this crime scene that is Brian's doing, you know, that whole thing, just to make sure that Dexter doesn't find out about Brian's, you know, mere existence before the original series. I also find it a little bit funny that, like, you know, Dexter shows up at whatever crime scenes he wants, given that one that he did a few episodes ago with the alligators and stuff, but nobody questions it this time. Yeah, I'm being a little bit of a smartass because I'm sure that there are plenty of crime scenes that Dexter doesn't get around to seeing, but it's a little bit funny, like, the picky and choosiness and convenience of like, oh yeah, Dexter's just not at this one. He didn't get assigned because of course he didn't. For the narrative, he can't be assigned to this one, right? Anyway, he's busy killing Spencer at the moment anyway. So then we see that Harry, though, upon witnessing Barb's body, sees it has been torn apart and is particularly horrified, knowing the context behind who this victim is and feeling part of the blame because he pretty much knows that this is Brian's doing at this point. He, LaGuardia, Masuka, and gambling addict Tanya Martin then discuss the facts about how Barb was alive as the cuts happened, to which sends Harry off on a tailspin, not being able to handle the horrific nature of what arguably he has created. Not so much in terms of, as the original series suggests, he's going to kill himself over, but, you know, just enough that he needs to at least leave the area. He exits the scene. And as he does so, he gets a visual on Brian, who is overlooking the crime scene from like some rooftop just over there, just out of sight. None of the other cops see him or anything, but Harry just happens to conveniently spot Brian over there, and he heads his way on over. Upon finding Brian upstairs on some city building nearby, Harry aims his gun his way straight away. A showdown and confrontation is upon us. And again, once again, shit's exciting. I can't help it. We're actually seeing Harry and Brian face to face for the first time. It's kind of epic. Anyway, so upon this confrontation, Harry says that he knows Brian killed Barb Plimpton, his caseworker, Royal Martinez, the orderly at the mental institute, as well as Paul Petrie, his therapist. But some facts that we learn as the two further talk is that the second NHI serial killer case Miami Metro had investigated earlier in the season was for a victim named Blake Kirsten, who was the son of the first family Brian was sent away to following his stay with the Morgans, the boy who shoved him into the closet as we saw in that opening flashback. And the other person that Brian killed, Woodard, who is the victim who was killed via plastic bags and the third victim found, is also somebody from his past, and also somebody from that opening flashback, the kid who stole Brian's food in his third home, who he stabbed in the hand with a fork. It's clear that every single violent act has been an attempt at accomplishing his own twisted revenge quest. And I gotta say, I fucking love this explanation. I love that the kills weren't just as random as they first appeared, even if they're not that deep, you know, it's just petty revenge. There's at least somewhat of a motivation here, deepening Brian's character and giving reason to the entire season and the serial killing which has taken place to begin with. Everything actually really ties up neatly, and I fucking love it. But snapping things back into focus, Harry then says that Petrie was right all along though, and that Brian shouldn't contact Dexter, as we see that even getting just the hopes of attaining the goal of being sent back to him has sent him on this murderous frenzy. You know, basically there's no good that can come from Brian being reunited with Dexter, at least in the public's eyes. Maybe to Dexter fans it might be a nice little reunion or whatever, but pretty much it's going to mean bad things for those around them. Harry's priority here, though, is to protect Dexter. He wants to keep Brian away from him, to which Brian feels betrayed, which we already know, but seeing it play out is a big deal. You know, Brian is hurt here, and this all comes from a place of pain and wrongdoing. Not just simply him being a psychopath, and it's as deep as an explanation as we get. The kills that he's made were done so for a reason, and I fucking love that. The way Brian sees it is that Harry sent him so far away, obscured who he was so much, to the extent that he was hidden away deep within the system, only to never be able to be reunited with his brother, just so that Harry could have Dexter all to himself. And, you know, it's a little bit more complicated than that, of course. It's not just black and white like that, but he's not wrong exactly. The beauty of it is that neither of them are wrong. They're both right, and we can both see their points of view. They are two characters who are strongly opposing here, but who are both right, and I fucking love when TV shows and movies can do that kind of thing. This is a brilliant scene and really brings these two characters' entire motivations into the foreground, focused on strongly, and we can understand both parties, and it all plays into the legacy of Dexter as a character and the series as a whole in a way that fits really fucking well. Color me impressed, Original Sin. This scene and these characters and their arcs are brilliant. Everything matches here, and it's just done so well. This is exponentially better than I was ever expecting Original Sin to ever get upon it before ever releasing. Harry then argues that he saved Dexter from a life of pain and that Brian can hate him for good reason, but still know that Harry is the best thing for Dexter. All that Brian can see, though, is that the world is against he and Dexter, and they're both right, they're both wrong, they're both bad people in their own ways, or at least flawed characters. I mean, Brian's pretty objectively bad, but Harry's a flawed person. They're both fucked up in their own personal ways as well. It's just so fucking good. It's so good. I love this shit. This is so good. I'm sorry to just repeat the same thing here, but I was really into this scene. Anyway, Harry then says that he's going to bring Brian in, to which he's having none of that, and challenges death in the way of once again being incarcerated, only this time in prison and not just a mental ward. Basically, death is better than, you know, the lack of freedom for Brian, which I believe, but he does change his mind pretty quickly as he does a bit of an oopsie-daisy change of heart and knocks Harry out instead. Upon waking up, though, Harry receives a message about Bobby, heads straight to the hospital with Brian being nowhere to be seen, and presumably, you know, even though he hates Harry, knows that he shouldn't just kill him. Basically, despite the fact that Brian just kills sort of indiscriminately in the original series, that's later. And for now, Brian is, you know, kind of like Dexter in a way, where he's only killing people that somewhat, in a way, his eyes deserve it. And basically, you know, he sees Harry as somewhat of a good person. Even if he hates him, it doesn't justify killing him, I suppose. I think that's sort of what I'm supposed to read into here. But then again, he did just kill an innocent counselor worker woman with a chainsaw brutally hours ago. So maybe that's bullshit. I don't know. But the important point is that Brian has also left a message in presumably Barb's blood on the wall for Harry to see before he leaves, which just reads, "You're right." And I was excited to see that he even got the grammar correct with the apostrophe in the right place. face. I've never been so proud of Brian. Good job, dude. As fucked up as an individual as you are, you can read and write. I don't know. I just would have been like, I would have got the ick or something if that apostrophe wasn't there. If he just wrote like your, like, you know, Y-O-U-R, it would have sent me in a rage. Anyway, now at the hospital, Harry has rushed over and the bird is the word on Bobby is that he's fine. And Harry and Deb hug when she sees that blood is on his shirt out of concern for him. They never explain whose blood that is to Deb, but whatever. He was just at a crime scene. I suppose it's believable enough. So now, with the two storylines having pretty much come to a close, Harry and Dexter return home to find each other at the Morgan household. And I find it interesting that throughout the season, Dexter's story has been all about investigating the NHI cases and finding his footing within Miami Metro. And Harry's has been about his relationship with Aaron Spencer, as well as his past with Laura. But the two have kind of converted here, if only to keep Dexter out of discovering the truth about Brian before season 1 of the original show. Basically, the season always had to shove Dexter away from the truth about Brian, and it does it in a brilliant way where, you know, he's off to kill Spencer. It makes sense why he wasn't present for all that, and Harry's been lying about it all to begin with anyway. So anyway, Harry has heard the news of Nikki having been found and realized that Dexter was right about Spencer as well. Dexter then fills him in on what happened and that he has successfully killed Aaron, who will now never hurt anyone ever again. Harry expresses his deep regret for not having seen the truth in Aaron Spencer. You know, he feels like a fool considering that he's known him for forever and considered him a good man and a friend. But to learn that he was capable of torturing his own son and killing a child proves just how wrong he was. I saw in Spencer what I wanted to see, he says, not who he actually was. But Dexter retorts that there was a time Spencer was the man that Harry thought he was. He merely became a monster. He was once a good man and he wasn't born this way like Dexter was, which technically Harry knows not to be true that Dexter was born that way, but confirms in order to dodge the truth about his past once again. Harry then expresses pride in Dexter despite having gone down a dark path. He sees the good in Dexter. He knows that he can kind of hold his own here within the code and stuff. And it's a really nice moment between the two men, father and son, who respect and love each other. And I fucking love it. Like, it's just this nice moment between the two very much alive still characters, which is nice. We'll then cut to Deb's high school for one last final high school drama bullshit scene. We see her and Sophia making up after being, you know, torn apart for episodes on end where they were fighting and stuff and having broken up as friends. They instead now apologize for all their shit and they are friends once again. And everything's wrapping up in a nice fucking bow. You know, like, it's not that much of an important moment in regards to everything else that has taken place within this episode, but it just goes to show how everything's wrapping up in a very nice and pleasant way. Deb's friends with her best friend again. Dexter did what he wanted to do. He killed the guy, saved the kid. Everything's great. Everything's great. Everyone's happy except Brian. So now, following this, back at Miami Metro, the police are stumped by Aaron's disappearance, but they know about his villainous ways. So even Spencer's memory isn't to be left in some form of a respected legacy, which is just what he deserves, so that's a nice little wrap up too. But I do find it funny how little reaction or shock we see on screen by the characters upon learning that their fucking police captain was a child murderer, but whatever. Like, I don't know. They seem to swallow that real easy, or at least we didn't actually see anyone reacting to it. Just feels like, you know, that's a bit of a big moment that they kind of just fully ignore. Anyway, Harry then lets Batista and us in on the official yet untrue news that he disagrees with LaGuardia on the NHI case and has filed a report that the bodies were random, which Maria overhears, basically putting an end to that entire case, and they're going to stop investigating Brian's murders, leaving him free. Meanwhile, in the lab, Dexter is promoted and officially hired by gambling addict Tanya Martin. It turns out that Sarah Michelle Gellar's guest appearance casting did not lead to her being a secret bad guy after all, like some of the fans thought. She's just a nice lady who happened to be played by a famous person. Isn't that nice? She then coldly chucks a bunch of cold cases Dexter's way for more busy work. We then hear that classic end of Dexter season music play that sounds like a western or something as things begin to wrap up. Dexter chucks us a look dead into the camera and raises his eyebrows at us, and we get that little ding like in the intro upon promising that there are more future victims to be met when looking down at the various files on his desk. And it gave me chills, I won't lie. I'm just going full fanboy mode at this point because I'm like all in. Following this though, Bobby is then seen being wheeled out of hospital by Harry as all the characters around applaud. And goddamn, things are looking a little too fucking perfect. You know, this is the most positive, happy ending of a season of Dexter that we've ever had, which is funny when we know that there is more tragedy in their direct future. But to celebrate all that's been going on, including Bobby's state of being awake and fine, Dexter's promotion and Deb's almost scholarship, the Morgans are seen sharing a meal together once again at that cafe way that we saw Brian in back in episode 2. I say Deb's almost scholarship, by the way, as she announces her plans are now to attend Miami Metro Police Academy instead. It's official, she's going to be a cop, and Harry's happy about it. So basically, there's not even drama when it comes to her changing her mind about her future. Harry's like, yep, good on you. Everything is sunshine and rainbows and lollipops and blowjobs and kittens and puppies and cash prizes and Dexter seasons and Pepsi Maxes and let's crash this parade getting lots of views. And sorry, I'm just listing things that I like now. That is all before Harry casually warns Dexter that he's not going to be around forever. Kind of spicing things up, promising some things for the future for his second season, which I assume we're getting. The weird thing though is how happy and normal Harry still seems to be, who's also super proud of Dexter's actions. He has no qualms about it at all. He's not at all torn up about how he killed Aaron Spencer or conflicted about what he's done. This makes his eventual death, which evidently does not happen in this episode or season, feel even weirder. And Harry's happy as a clam, dude. He's got no issues in his life at the moment. And the episode now closes out though as the Morgie Morgans happily even dance together before a still separated and seeking Brian Moser ominously watches from afar outside through the window. And we get a dramatic beat before the episode and season ends. I guess this shows that Brian is still obsessed but still keeps away. Perhaps playing the bigger person and understanding Harry's words about him being bad for Dexter, letting him go off to live on without him in an arguably selfless act. You know, at least for now, before he does pursue him eventually in season 1. That's the way I'm choosing to read it anyway, and what I think this final shot of Brian is suggesting. Though I do have to say it does feel a little bit disingenuous, as this obsessively crazed serial killer has been making his way to Dexter every chance throughout his entire life that he could get, but now he just decides, fuck it, nah, I'm gonna stop because Harry told him to. I'm not sure I buy that, but I guess for now he's decided this before choosing to once again follow his path again in another 15 years. First, he's got to take a quick side quest to go to medical school in the meantime, I suppose, and get a fake ID to be known as Rudy to those around him. I don't know. I guess it fits technically. You know, ultimately it does fit, but that's about the only thing I'm really taking issue with, where I'm not quite sure I 100% buy it. Even if it does fit, it doesn't feel true, if that makes sense. But hey, that's how it plays out, and if that's my biggest issue with this episode and pretty much this season, that's really not that bad of a thing to be complaining about. You know, one of the character motivations felt just a little bit disingenuous to me. Hey, that's a pretty good sign that you've got a good season of TV here, if that's your worst problem, you know? But with that, I'm kind of glad that we got a happy Dexter ending, at least for now, you know? Sure, we know it's not forever, we know bad shit's gonna happen to these characters that we love, but for now, it's just nice and pleasant, and that's that. That's Original Sin. It went in mostly the direction I expected with Aaron Spencer, that was obvious, but for Harry still being alive and everything looking fine and dandy, kind of tells me that we're in for another season of Original Sin. I think that's just about a definite at this point, no doubt about it, you know, which I'm mostly happy about. It hasn't been confirmed or anything just yet, at least as of recording. I'm pretty sure it's coming. And with that, I gotta say that Original Sin has proven to be a strong show and season on its own, more so than I ever expected before it started. It also makes me a little bit nervous if we do get another season, because more Original Sin means more opportunity to potentially fuck up the legacy. And my biggest fear is that they're gonna change Harry's death, something I strongly don't want them to do and something we still don't know the answer to yet. But I should express my faith in the writers of this season and put my trust in them if they came up with this season, which I have to say has been pretty damn strong, and that they'll be able to pull off a second season if things do go down that way. I just don't want them to change Harry's death, because I think it's important to the narrative that it is Dexter's fault that Harry dies. I think that matters to the character. I don't like if they change that context. It's gonna kind of fill me with rage, if I'm being honest. I think it's important to both characters that those two are intertwined, regardless of what happened with Brian. I think it has to be more so about Dexter, because he's the main character. It's his story, you know? So I hope it's not that Brian kills him or whatever in the second season. But hey, that's probably at least a year away to be talking about now, so I don't know. But that's Original Sin. But before I fully wrap things up and end this video, I do just want to thank all those who have been watching this series with me along the way. You know, thank you to everybody who has returned to each video week by week and commenting on these videos and liking them and letting me know that you're in full support of these things. I really appreciate that. You know, it's not something I'm super used to have an almost guaranteed at least few thousand views per video. It's kind of a big deal. And you've made yourselves seen and heard. You know, we've had some great discussions in the comments, which is cool, among some dumbass comments, just by the way, which, hey, it's the internet, that shit's gonna happen, it's inevitable. But the point is, I get it. You guys like Dexter, and you guys seem to like me. So upon closing this season out, I'm planning to continue to make some more Dexter content. Not not exclusively. I'm not saying that, you know, every single video is going to be Dexter, but I do think I would be a little bit of an idiot to not focus on Dexter, at least, you know, somewhat at the time. I want to talk about New Blood. I want to talk about, I don't know, possibly some rankings and stuff like that. Maybe comment and let me know what you would like to see from me if you have any good ideas. And yeah, you know, I love Dexter. I want to keep talking about Dexter, and it seems like that's what people are liking from me anyway. So guess I'm announcing here more Dexter to come. Yay. But yeah, again, just genuinely, like, I really appreciate all of the support that I've had these past pretty much 2 months at this point. It's been kind of a big deal, kind of an ego boost as well. It's been nice to get some support, some nice words and stuff. People telling me I'm making good stuff and everything. I mean, that's nice, isn't it? So with that, please give me a little gift in return by giving me lots of views with this video. I'll munch them up. Yum, yum, yum. Give me views. Please, please, please. No, that's silly though, because if you're hearing me say this, you've already given me your view, obviously. But yeah. Either way, I do appreciate it. I counted over the past few videos and stuff, and all up, it was like I got 70,000 views across 8 videos at the time, I guess. This is the 9th one going up. That's pretty massive for my channel anyway. I'm just a small channel and everything, so yeah, it's been awesome. It's a bit bittersweet that Original Sin is coming to a close, because it was good to have that little bit of, like, you know, week by week, I make this thing, you know, and it's been constructive for me, I think. It's been a good thing to focus on, and it's been fun talking about it week by week, theorizing what's going to happen next with all that stuff, telling you what I all think and summing up all the episodes. It's good to have this on record too. Like, I have this history of this moment in time where we all watched Original Sin together. But at the same time, I do have to say I'm a little bit relieved as well. I'm a little bit relieved that I'm finally going to be able to escape this grind, because as much fun as I've had, it's also been like week after week, I have to stay up all night on Friday, pull an all-nighter, which I'm going to have to do as well tonight as I edit this video. So it will be at the same time a little bit of a bittersweet nice thing to not have to do that and focus on videos that don't have to be so timely. You know, if I make a New Blood video, well, when I make a New Blood video, it's not going to matter so much when I post it, as long as it's before Resurrection. That's really my only plan. So it's nice to not have a stricter deadline in my future, I suppose is my point. But no, overall, I'm still pretty sad that it's going to be the end, because this has been a strong series. I gotta say, overall, this has been a strong series. I was a skeptic. I gotta say, I gotta admit, I was like, I don't want this shit. No one wants this shit. I made a video about it a couple of years ago when they first announced it. I'm like, no one wants this shit. A Dexter prequel? Fuck right off. But hey, you proved me wrong, Original Sin team. So good on you. I'm thankful, to be honest. It's cool. So I guess that's about all I have to say. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of the people who have been coming back and returning to these videos. It's a big deal. I really appreciate it. But before you go, please do the things, which are the things that all the YouTubers always say, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that shit. I'm outie. Goodbye.